What's up? Welcome in. Hoge Jahns with you in Indianapolis. Another year of NFL Combine coverage. I feel like every year we've done the show differently.
Different spots in the
Different
media room,
spots.
hotel rooms, years ago.
Technically, we are on Radio Row right now. We hijacked the CHGO set to do the show.
There are so many more tables here in Radio Row. Like I would say it almost rivals. It's not as big as the Super Bowl, but I mean, you tell me. You were just in New Orleans. Is this?
Oh no, the Super Bowl. You got to see the Super Bowl these days.
More?
So, the Super Bowl will be 8 times this room, and then
I know that.
And then there's a whole nother ring of giant TVs, like all the sets that are over here behind us that nobody can see. Actually, as I'm pointing, there's those all the way around the whole perimeter. It's wild. It's crazy.
It's changing, ever changing.
Yeah, league keeps growing and growing and growing. Busy day here in Indy. We heard from Ryan Poles. We heard from Ben Johnson. Kind of your typical Tuesday in Indy with the Bears media availability and all of that. But of course, first time we're hearing from Ben Johnson. I guess it's year 4 of hearing from Ryan Poles.
The first year he did it, the Bears reserved the small conference room in the convention center, which we're in, well, technically in right now in Indianapolis. And that was more intimate. And then they started doing the Starbucks thing by the JW. We're in the JW by the
Well,
Starbucks.
they had been doing that before, too. Pace did that, too.
Pace one year did it in this room next to, like, a mannequin of Jay Cutler. Remember that? Or is it had a Bears jersey on?
Vaguely. I don't know. Did he try to sign him?
No, he probably tried to release him.
Oh, okay.
Somehow.
Get this out of here. So a lot to talk about. We have some sound to play too from the press conferences today. But any early takeaways just from being back at the Combine? You've been here for a couple of days.
I have. The lead of my column, which is now up on theathletic.com, I described Ryan Poles like he felt empowered to me. Just the way the words he used, talking about vision, having a clear vision, being aggressive in free agency, being aggressive in different ways to retool his roster. That felt very different for me, as opposed to when we talked to him after the season, where he just fired Matt Eberflus, the guy he came into the NFL with, or at least with the Bears. And there were so many changes afoot, so many changes coming for the Bears. It just felt different. He seemed like his confident self again, looking ahead with Ben Johnson at his side.
Yeah, he talked about in his opening statement just the energy being different since the new coaching staff came in. I think that probably applies to himself too. I mean, I can't help but kind of go back to the press conference right after they fired Eberflus and how that really did not go well for Ryan Poles. It was not a good press conference. He was the opposite of empowered.
Well, it should have been a bad press conference for him, but that felt
right.
Really
but the way
bad.
he was trumped by Kevin Warren's presence, it used the word empowered. Completely different vibe now compared to what it was that day.
Yeah.
So from that standpoint, they've come a long way. And
well, there's a lot of reasons why Ben Johnson chose the Bears. And let's not forget that one of them is Ryan Poles himself. Yes, Caleb Williams. Yes, there's other good players on the roster. Yes, he wanted to stay in the division. Yes, he went to Cubs games with his family. But then another reason was working with Ryan Poles and what he did with his roster, what he did to draft Caleb Williams. So he should feel empowered. He should feel encouraged about what's next for his team because he's got all this cap space. He's got 3 picks in the top 41. He should feel very encouraged about what's next.
Yeah, it's good vibes. It's good vibes. The thing I've been fighting, and I was talking about this on CSGO today, is just like I can simultaneously feel the good vibes of Ben Johnson. And when he talks, I don't know, Bragg's called him electric. I don't know if I'd go that far, but when he talks, there's a certain confidence that just oozes from him that you believe everything he's saying. And so these are really good things. And at the same time, I don't know if it's just coming to this combine too many years. It's like, yeah, but we've seen this before. Like,
but would you ever?
I just don't know how much of this matters until they actually play games.
Have you ever described the Matt Eberflus press conference as electric?
Definitely not one of those.
But seriously, I don't mean to criticize Matt Eberflus in the situation.
I mean, I also don't know if I would use that for Ben Johnson.
Okay.
I just think it's...
How about this? Let me give you this story.
Yeah.
So Ben Johnson speaks. I think a lot of us were curious to see what type of energy, what type of vibe he would have after all the confidence that he exuded at his introductory press conference. So this is the first time we're seeing him in person in a setting like this with more media than what was at Hallis Hall. I felt like he came off as confident. I thought he came off as energized, to the point now we're back in the media room here in the convention center, and other media members who don't cover the Bears, who have just interest in the league, are walking by complimenting, like, wow, he was impressive, like telling us that, like, no reason to tell us that, but he was impressive. That a lot of good things you heard there. Like, took control of the situation, took control of his answers, seemed to have a vision or an idea of what he wants to accomplish.
He seems to have a vision for exactly everything he wants to do. And I think that's different from, I think that's probably one of the biggest difference I'd say about Matt Eberflus. Think about everything we were 3 years ago when we were down here. That was all about the hits principle. That's like anytime you like brought up like this, like whatever it was just like everything came back to the hits principle. And like this with Ben, I feel like it's like you can bring up, like Braggs hit him with an analytics question and he was ready for that. And he talked about Harry Freed, why
someone he's known since Miami.
Yeah, which is why he's back despite, some of the stuff that happened with Matt Eberflus. Like they have a relationship. That's somebody you need to trust. So it's like whatever topic you bring up, the only question he really didn't answer and avoided, but he still had a separate answer that was sort of about it. But Courtney asked him directly about Myles Garrett.
I just think head coaches and GMs they don't talk about players in other teams that are under contract for other teams. You heard that earlier today with Ryan Poles and Trey Smith when he was asked about him. Mm-hmm. Even though they have a direct connection, Ryan Poles played a big role in the drafting of Trey Smith.
Yeah, I thought that was, and there was a little Trey Smith news today too, because Brett Veach spoke very positively about being able to re-sign him, which I thought was interesting.
Well, they're going to use the transition tag. Are they going to use the franchise tag? I know there's been reports already about that not being on the table for such a deal. Obviously, they want to keep him. Obviously, you all watched the Super Bowl and what happened to that Chiefs offensive line. So losing a Pro Bowl player is not a good thing if you want to protect Patrick Mahomes. But there's only so much money to go around. And if you need him to test the market, I mean, obviously there's a connection to Ryan Poles that can be had for the Bears.
Well, and that was my reaction to that whole story was, okay, that's great that the Chiefs are giving off this positivity that they think they can re-sign him. But if you're Trey Smith and they don't use a tag, why wouldn't you go hit the open market? You're going to get paid more money, even if you ended up being with the Chiefs.
Yeah, the agent side of this the advice would be to prolong this unless you are very confident that the offer you got from the Chiefs was top of the line guard market.
Which I think in this situation it wouldn't be. I think he's going to get paid more if he goes to the open market.
Absolutely.
So that's just a caveat I would say to what the Chiefs said today, what Brett Veach said. Great, but if you're not going to use a tag, then Trey Smith has the power. And Trey Smith could still, and maybe we'll hear more about that over the next couple of days about kind of where that might be headed. But that was kind of the latest on all that. So should we hear from Poles a little bit here?
Yeah, let's start with Ryan Poles. This was earlier this morning in the JW Marriott by the Starbucks. I'll just preface this. It's Ryan Poles discussing how he and Ben Johnson are starting to work together and everything that's going on at Halas in terms of roster evaluations, and that's the draft and free agency.
Yeah, we talked about this a lot just within the search, having a clear vision of what every single position needs to have. Now, it's never going to be perfect. You can't have like a prototype at every single position, but as a front office, we want to be as close as possible with that. So his ability to really give a clear vision of what he wants and needs to be successful has been really, really good. And you can just tell the high football IQ is on a totally different level than what I've seen and been a part of before. So it's really good. It starts with just individual conversations with us sitting down and going through it. But I think the big thing is bringing the groups together. So our entire front office got together. We went through position by position, the criteria of what he's looking to do. And then we did it again when all of our scouts flew in for our draft meetings, went through that once again just to, again, understand and have a clear vision of what we're looking for, because that does alter the way that you stack your board and prioritize in free agency.
Ben Johnson later revealed that his entire coaching staff were in the same meetings with the entire front office department, the personnel department, and how you're meshing things. Now, this happens Like, this is what happens when you have regime change. This is what happens when you bring in a new head coach and he brings in his new coordinators. He brings in his new assistant coaches. The personnel evaluations change a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But what did you make of Ben Johnson later saying that this has actually been kind of new for him because it's different than we learned in Miami, different than what he learned in Detroit under Patricia, and different under Campbell?
Yeah, just in terms of like the scouting side of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I liked hearing that from Poles this morning when he was like, yeah, so we sat down with the coaching staff and went through position by position what you guys want. Got to get the front office on the same page. And then they did it again when the scouts flew in, because college scouts live all over the country, right? And then so sometimes in events like this, obviously the combine too, they got to bring them all in here. So they have meetings ahead of the combine. They start having their draft prep, and they did all that. So now the scouts know what they need to be looking for too. It's a pretty big adjustment.
Yeah.
There's not a ton of turnover in the front office, but
there's like zero turnover in the front office other than a promotion for Matt Feinstein, who doesn't really, he handles the contract negotiations as opposed to personnel evaluations.
But it's still a huge, so no turnover, but it's still a big adjustment for them. They got to adjust to the coaching staff more than the coaching staff adjusts to the front office.
Yeah.
Like, you got to get these coaches what they want.
The best front offices go find players that fit what the coaches want to do.
Right. Right.
Schemes. It's more than schemes.
But
they have
it becomes a tug of war both sides, because at the same time, we heard Ben Johnson say this at his opening press conference, like, this is going to be the Bears offense. We're going to adapt to what we have. So it's this constant, you can't, you want your front office going to get you players that fit what you want to do, but as coaches, you got to work with what you have in the present. So, but
it's going to change quickly here in a matter of weeks.
Right. But you do see changes, because I've asked today about why Gerald Everett and DeMarcus Walker were let go. Yeah, there's the contract and the cap savings, but Ryan Poles was pretty direct about how it was scheme.
Yep.
This not a great scheme fit.
How different do you think the criteria, to use Ryan Poles' his words, the criteria that Ben Johnson has for certain positions, how different do you think that is than what Matt Eberflus presented, than what, Shane Waldron and before him, Luke Getsy presented?
Yeah, well, I think that's a complicated thing to answer, because they're on different sides of the ball. Like, I think it's more of like, when I think about that question, I want to know more about like what Dennis Allen sees in a defensive end versus what Matt Eberflus does. You know what I mean? I think offensively, I don't know the last time the Bears had a clear vision for what they wanted. Like, to be honest, because I think Matt Nagy came in with one, but then he didn't have the right guys, and then he kept trying to change, and then he really couldn't. He never really could adapt to what his players wanted.
Then he get rid of Mark Helfrich, and then get rid of Harry Heaston, and brought in different assistant coaches who were involved in the run game.
Right. So and then with Getsy and Waldron. I mean, I think Waldron, obviously, they did make some changes last year. They brought in Seahawks guys that had connections to it, but just never really fit. I think starting over on that side of the ball, just you could hear it in Ben's answers. Like, Ben has conviction on almost everything he's saying. And so I don't know that we know the answer right now. I mean, we can go off some of the Lions stuff, right?
I think we'll know once the signings are made.
Right.
Once the selections are made on draft day as well.
Yeah, by the time this team gets together in April for their first OTAs in the offseason program, we'll have a pretty good idea.
Yeah.
But I like that he will have a vision. He will have – it won't be like this murky thing. I don't think it will be.
What did you make of his IQ comment? Sorry, Ryan Poles basically saying, like, the high IQ of Ben Johnson is something new for him. You put that up on X or Twitter or Blue Sky, whatever you want to call it. Is that a shot at Matt Eberflus? Is that a shot at the previous coaches that he had here?
I don't think it's a shot. I mean, it might. It's a difference. It's a shot because Flus at the end of the day wasn't equipped to be a head coach. But I just think there's different types of coaches, Johns. I think there's okay. I think we all think Mike Vrabel's a good coach and got hired by the Patriots. Is he a guy with, you would say, high IQ? Like, would Ryan Poles be talking about high? You know what I mean? Like, he's more of like football guy. I think Ben Johnson. Well, first of all, I think Ben Johnson loves football too. But he's
a smart
the
football guy.
computer science mathematics guy.
And proudly acknowledges that. He said that today at the convention center.
Right.
So here's the exact quote. All right. So Johnson's ability, this is Brian Poles. So Johnson's ability to really give a clear vision of what he wants and needs to be successful has been really, really good. And you could just tell the high football IQ is on a totally different level than what I've seen and been a part of before. So it's really good. This is a GM who has worked with Andy Reid, who is one of the best offensive minds ever. Of all time. Now, I'm not saying that Ryan Poles is saying that Ben Johnson is smarter than Andy Reid, because we can't have that conversation. That conversation shouldn't exist until.
But his IQ probably is higher than Andy Reid's. Like, just from an intellectual standpoint. I'm not trying to insult anybody here, but like Andy Reid's more of the football guy, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like the gritty old. You see these old videos of him and Brett Favre in Green Bay. You know what I mean? Like, he's the giant kid on the field at the kick, pass, punt, whatever they call it thing.
What I wondered is just how detailed this clear vision was, like, articulated, and how many layers it had to it. Like, we want this type of slot receiver because he can do this, that, and that for us. And he's got a whole list of things he could provide in the offense with a skill set of this, if he could get that for a slot receiver. I don't know if that's Keenan Allen. I don't think it's going to be Keenan Allen, but I wonder how detailed he got. Maybe that's where the high football IQ comment came. This next clip that I want to play, I know you played it on your other show as well. This is Ben Johnson talking about the Bears' ability to retool this offensive line. This offensive line that has 3 openings at left guard, center, and right guard. Like, how quickly can the Bears fill those spots? How quickly can the Bears retool their offensive line in one offseason?
Yeah, I think it's been done before, right? I mean, I think there's a number of teams that did that last year. The Panthers come to mind when they went out in free agency and got a couple top guards and really changed the dynamic of their offense. And you saw them clicking there in the second half of the season once they started to really gel. So there's no question that you can change the dynamic of a room just like that. That particular room, it does take a little bit of time for 5 guys to come together, especially if you have to deal with the attrition and the injuries, for 5 guys to be working on the same page. It's when you watch the tape and you come away with, I think I made this statement in my opening press conference that that's an area we have to get better. That doesn't necessarily mean we need 5 new starters, because all it takes is one individual to blow up a play. And so we're just identifying where we can get a little bit better, and we're going to continue to raise that floor, and we'll find the right mix of 5 to 8, 9, 10 guys.
He had an example. That's something.
Oh, no, he's paying attention around the league. And
no, I would even take it a step further. It means it's been discussed
at
Hallis Hall at length.
I don't think there's any question you can flip an offensive line and all. It's a different position, but when Nagy came in, do you remember the Bears wide receivers in 2017? Like, they were horrible.
Yeah.
And then you got Allen Robinson and Taylor Gabriel, and there was a third one too. Oh, they drafted Anthony Miller. So it's like
signed Trey Burton as well.
Yeah, and so and I'm not saying, obviously, probably 3 of those 4 moves didn't work, but although I like Taylor Gabriel. He's a solid player.
But Trey Burton worked for 1 year.
But the point is that room looked completely different. Like, so and that's 4 players if you're including the tight end. So especially with the Bears' flexibility that they have. I mean, I keep saying this. I'm not expecting them to do that, but like they have enough room and flexibility to sign Trey Smith and Drew Dalman and still have more money to sign other players.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not sure I would recommend using the whole thing right now. You want to give yourself financial flexibility in the future, but they could do that, and then you draft another guy. Now your offensive line is different.
Completely different.
Yeah. Now let me ask you this, because I thought it was one of the more. I don't think there was a lot of news that came out today on the Bears side of things, but I did think Ryan Poles' answer about left tackle was interesting, saying there would be competition there, and also, I don't think we know exactly when Braxton Jones will even be available to come back, but probably training camp at the earliest. So if you're bringing in competition and your practices start in April, that puts Braxton Jones behind in the competition, beyond the fact that he's also coming off a serious injury. So my point is, would it be more fair to say that they actually have 3.5 openings on their offensive line?
Potentially. Is that competition already on the roster in Karan Amagaji?
I'm not.
You don't like him.
It's not that I don't like him. I haven't seen enough to like him.
Fair.
I mean, it's a huge. To me, it's a huge leap to just think.
Still 3rd round pick, but 75th overall.
Yeah.
And again, that entire scouting department that drafted him is still there. Now, Ben Johnson's vision could be different. His skill set may not fit what Ben Johnson wants, but I don't think they're writing him off.
If we're gonna call that a competition, Braxton Jones, Karan Amagaji, I would hope that at least let's call it a B level free agent. So not the A guys that sign right away, but at least a B level free agent.
Like, here's my thought on like
plus an early draft pick is in that competition.
Enough with signing like B guys.
I know I don't like that.
Sign A guys.
I just don't know if there's an obvious one at tackle.
There's an obvious one at guard.
Yeah.
Trey Smith. And there might be another obvious one. Kevin Zeitler is obviously not an A level.
I like signing Zeitler for a year.
Yes, 100%. He's 34 years old. Just played 16 games. Started 16 games for the Lions and Ben Johnson. He's more than functional. See, that's a bit different. But left tackle, if you're going to invest in that position, I think you draft somebody. Like, is that Will Campbell? Are his arms long enough here in the next couple of days? Does that work out? Maybe
better start stretching them out.
Yeah, it works. I mean, if Kenny Pickett's hands could grow somehow in 2
that
3
wild.
weeks.
How did it make your hands grow from the Senior
It's
Bowl
weird.
to the NFL Combine?
So the guards that the Panthers signed were Robert Hunt and Damian Lewis. They both got big, lucrative contracts. These weren't one-year deals. Hunt got a massive deal. I think Lewis got a 4-year deal. A lot of money, guaranteed money. There was investment made.
Yeah.
And Ryan Poles himself, it wasn't too long ago where the Chiefs had questions about their offensive line, about what went wrong in the playoffs for them.
Mm-hmm.
And the stories about how Trey Smith was drafted, about how others were signed, and how Ryan Poles, how Andy Reid, how Brett Veach retooled that offensive line in one offseason. So there's experience doing this.
Yeah, and I think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, you could almost call it like tipping his hand with that answer. I'm talking about what Ben Johnson said about the O-line and pointing out what the Panthers did and having specific examples. But what are they really tipping here? I think the whole league knows that the Bears are in the market for.
They have 3. Yeah. Their 3 interior starters are all unrestricted free agents.
But this is a good week where we start to get real vibes, real information to and sort of mix it in. You start to trust your instincts on where things are headed. And I'll just say I'll be shocked if what are we? It's February 25th, so we're what? Like 13 days away from free agency, like 2 weeks. We're 2 weeks away from free agency. I'll be shocked if 2 weeks from today, so Tuesday would be the second day of the negotiating window being open, which means there'll be reported deals already out there. That there's not a massive investment made in the offensive line.
You would hope so. And I would hope it's more than one player.
I think it will be.
I don't know if I know how important the center position is to Ben Johnson's offense. I don't know if Dahlman is the answer to that. Again, I don't like signing damaged goods in a sense because he did not play a full season. I would be okay. Like, would you be okay if the free agency investment was Trey Smith, Kevin Zeitler? Like, there's your 2 starting guards. And then maybe you go into the second, third waves of free agency to find what you can get for competition.
I need to see something at center. I think the Bears missed a huge opportunity last year drafting one of those centers that was there. There's so many good centers in the draft last year, and this isn't the same draft. And that just seemed, and maybe that's honestly maybe that's affecting a little bit of my early opinion on Karan Amagaji because I just would have rather seen that been a center.
Like a true center.
In the third round, there were guys there. There was guys there available, and you just took a swing on a tackle that was hurt and didn't play at a high level. So it's
played at Yale, not exactly
right.
Alabama, Ohio State.
So it's definitely nothing personal against Karan, and I hope that works out. Like I do see the tools. I do see he's got the size, but. The early results are probably unfair because I don't think he got put in a position to have success, which is your job as coaches, as front office, to put that guy in a position to have success. I don't think he was in that position last year, so it's a tough early evaluation. But I'd love to be talking about right now a second-year center
developing.
Like a guy who got that experience. And now you probably gotta throw money at that problem.
And maybe a draft pick.
Yeah, they both.
All right.
One more Ben Johnson clip, right?
Yeah, one final piece of audio. We have, what was your question?
Mm-hmm.
Shout it out at the end.
Yeah,
Declan Doyle.
It was a battle there.
Tell me about him.
But what?
Craig like that.
Yeah.
Laughing over there.
Yeah. Go get Ian Rappaport on the show, will you? I know. That's why I said that. He's been chasing Ian Rappaport for like 3 years.
And he's right there.
Yeah. Well, look. So, they said last question, and that was one of the things I wanted answered today, which was, and he started going in a little bit early on in this press conference, like about how he landed certain guys and how it's not all his friends. And I wanted, okay, so how the hell did you get Declan Doyle? Like what? And he gave a great answer. So here's the.
That's it.
Yeah, here it is.
Declan, so great story about him. I ended up calling John Morton, who took the OC job at Detroit. He'd worked with Declan the last couple of years, and I asked him, I said, hey, how's Declan doing? Is he ready to be a coordinator? He said, Ben, listen, he's another Ben Johnson, which I think that's a good thing. I'm banking on that being a good thing. So, listen, I think he and I are a match made in heaven. He thinks very much like me. It's been awesome getting him into the building the last few weeks, and extremely detailed, extremely organized. The age does not matter. He is going to be respected by not only the players but also his fellow coaches as well. I can already see that coming into place with the coaching staff meetings that we're having right now. He's very well informed. It's just like anybody. If you can help make the people around you better, they're going to find value in you. And so that's what Declan's bringing to the table for us right now.
You know, that last part, I'm glad he brought that up because I've been thinking about that. I think that's a bigger issue maybe with players than it is within a coaching staff. Again, I don't like to make the same comparisons when we're talking about high school to the NFL. But, you know, some of our best coaches at Carmel were like, and now I've been with them for 5 years, but like, they're like kids coming out of college. I agree. The point I'm trying to make is the age to me didn't matter at all. Like I talked to them, they're like 50, even though they're like in their 20s. You know what I mean? So like, I think within the dynamics of the staff, I actually agree with them. That doesn't matter at all. I do think, but again, I don't know if it has so much to do with age. It's just as much as you just command a room and command respect from players. I'll go with them most of the way on the age part too with the players. It would be a little weird. I don't know that Mercedes Lewis is going to be back, but if he was, Declan Doyle trying to coach up Mercedes Lewis, it's a little bit of an odd dynamic. You know, a 28-year-old and a guy who's going to be 41, right?
Yeah.
But I think if he's everything that Ben described there in that clip, I don't think it'll be an issue.
I like, at least you get a sense from hearing Ben Johnson talk about this, that he was already on his radar. Like, hey, like, how is he doing? John, tell me, how is he doing? You know, I've heard about him. Sean Payton probably speaks glowingly of him. How's he doing? Is he ready to do what I did a few years ago? Now, obviously, it's a different situation. He's not going to be calling the plays. He's going to be doing a lot of the dirty work that, well, Ben Johnson just can't do anymore. He's not calling plays and all that stuff. So there's a lot of layers to why Declan Doyle was the perfect fit. But I'm going to go back to what you said and what he said earlier. I love that Declan Doyle is from the Sean Payton tree. I like that Press Taylor learned from Chip Kelly. How you just got, like, he didn't want everybody from the same scheme. He wanted different voices. This kind of just reminds me of his upbringing. Stories, a story I wrote for The Athletic, right, not too long ago about Ben Johnson's rise, how he just gathered so much from so many different resources. Mike Sherman, Bill Lazor, Mike Martz, just different offensive influences. Butch Davis, just so many resources that he gathered from to build what he had in Detroit. Like, that wasn't an offshoot of the Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan offense that you see everywhere.
Yeah.
That was something that he built himself. Ben Johnson's offense, the Lions offense, like, that belonged to him.
And that's why it was the most coveted candidate this year. You know, well, him and Mike Vrabel. But, yeah, and I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt on this because, I think it matters that he didn't take a job the last 2 cycles. So if he were to have taken that Carolina job a few years ago, I don't think that does he even know who Declan Doyle is? You know what I mean? Like you're just like, it's a whirlwind. He had just kind of gotten on board as the coordinator of the Lions. All of a sudden, getting head coaching opportunities. Like, okay, so you pass on that one. Well, now you start to think about it more, and you have time in that offseason to be like, all right, well, if I do get hired next year, who would be on my staff? And you start to have those conversations. You start to here in Indy. This is what all these coaches are doing now. They're networking. They're
you literally see it. They're introducing themselves to each other in the hallways.
Yeah, and it's not just about now. It's about lining yourself up for the future. And so it's those types of conversations that happen here. This is why this is such an important week. And I bet you, I don't know this. I'm just sort of speculating now, but my guess would be Ben Johnson's been working his ass off the last couple of years at weeks like this to line himself up so that when he finally did take that job, that he's got to know that I'm not going to be able to bring the Detroit Lions staff over. And he brought a couple of his friends. He said, it's not full of all my friends, but it's filled with a couple of important ones.
Yes.
Antoine Randall.
You need the assistant head coach.
That's a big one.
An immensely important position.
Yeah, and he's going to be empowered, quite frankly, probably more than Declan Doyle. He is the assistant head coach.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I know I asked Nate Tice that a couple weeks ago, and he's like, yeah, no, if you have the assistant head coach title, you're basically second in command, despite the fact that he's still the wide receivers coach. So
I hope that leads to different availability with him because we should be able to hear from him more often as opposed to the every 2 weeks with the assistant coaches.
I don't know if it will, but I agree with you. I'd love to be able to hear from Antoine Randall every week, but it might be every 2 weeks.
So let's talk about this a little bit further.
Mm-hmm.
You and I have talked in the past about how we both think Matt Nagy, when he gets a second chance, will be a better head coach.
Yeah.
I think you and I have talked before about how, well, maybe he just wasn't ready. He has certain charismatic traits that are positive. He, obviously, being from the Andy Reid tree can be a positive, but he lacked play calling experience. He just lacked different experiences in general.
Right.
So Ben Johnson, 3 years offensive coordinator, 3 years calling his own plays. No disputing, no wondering who's calling the plays. Like, it's him.
Mm-hmm.
It
sounds like most of the fourth down decisions were him too.
Yes.
He was empowered to do that.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
So to have him, I just like the idea that he was willing to wait for a job to open up for him. Now, obviously, you learn more that he wanted to stay in the division, love Chicago. Maybe things a different year and a different timeline, things don't line up the way they want for Ben Johnson, but they did this year. But just in general, the idea that he was willing to wait, didn't jump at the first job, like he believed in himself, was willing to go learn more, test himself more, build more in Detroit. Like, I like that.
Well, I compare it to the Caleb Williams situation because what you just described was a lot of stars having to align together to end up with a perfect ending. Well, it's not the ending; it's still the beginning. But a perfect result for how the Bears landed the head coach that made the most sense in Ben Johnson. I look back on the Caleb Williams saga all the time too, and I know we lived that a year ago when we were down here thinking about it. But it's like, you had to that doesn't happen without that miracle 4th and 20 in a Texans Colts game. Then you get a shrewd trade to trade back. But even once you make that trade, there's no guarantee that the Carolina Panthers are going to give you the number 1 pick.
Right.
And it's just so many things had to go right to line up for the Bears to end up with Caleb Williams. And I think the same thing can be said about Ben Johnson.
Maybe you had to lose to win.
Yeah. I mean, even the timing of when the Lions lost that game.
Yeah.
Who knows how that plays out? I mean, I think
I'm willing to believe the Bears were okay with waiting.
I think so with what we learned, but I know I've talked about this before. I don't know if the feeling was mutual, but I do believe the Bears were interested in at least having a serious conversation with Marcus Freeman. If they lose earlier and Ben Johnson plays later, these are how these things sometimes play out. You just never know. You never know how things can change in some of these wacky coaching searches. You saw once the Bears hired Ben Johnson on that Monday, the dominoes fell by Friday across the whole league, except for Kellen Moore. But then that was pretty much, the last remaining
Well, they
thing.
had to wait it out.
So, and all of those teams had to adjust to the Lions losing, which no one really saw coming on that Saturday in Detroit. So it's always fascinating to think about. A lot of stars aligned. I guess my overall point of bringing all that up is if this doesn't work, Johns, I don't know what will.
How much?
Seriously.
True.
I'm being honest. Like you got the can't miss quarterback. You got the can't miss head coach. That doesn't guarantee anything, obviously, but you had everything aligned there perfectly. And you have a pretty decent roster. You have all the cap space. You have the draft capital. If this doesn't lead to some success, I don't know what will.
I don't know if I would describe it as can't miss, but yes, draft Caleb Williams. That makes sense. Like
the obvious thing.
Hire Ben Johnson. Yes, makes a ton of sense. The obvious decision. The obvious decisions have been made by the Bears. Mm-hmm. One last personnel question for you. What did you make of Ben Johnson's praise for running back DeAndre Swift?
Yeah, good question that got brought up because I was actually kicking myself that did not get brought up as introductory press conference. I buy it, and I did some digging on that too. I'm trying to think about when that was, if that was actually on a show or not. Regardless, I remember being told that no, that was on our show. That was last week when Nick said that he didn't really think that was a Ben Johnson thing, that was just more of a
we could get an upgrade thing.
Yeah. So whatever Nick said on the show last week, I was listening, I promise. But I thought that was backed up in his answer today, is what I'm getting at. Because Ben Johnson could have left that pretty open-ended, like, hopefully we get to work together or something, like kind of how Kevin O'Connell's had to talk awkwardly about Sam Darnold right now. You know what I mean? But that's not
you got that vibe from the Swift answer?
No, I'm saying it was the opposite of that.
Okay.
I'm saying that could have been what it was.
No. Yeah.
And it was not that. It was no, I'm looking forward to, using him as a piece and
we call him like an explosive element to have in his offense.
I still think though I will be very surprised if they don't add another significant running back to the equation.
Well,
whether that's a signing one or maybe more likely like in the second or third round of the draft.
Do you think Roschon Johnson should be worried about his place on the roster? Like does he give you enough of what David Montgomery provides the Lions? I don't think he does.
Oh God, no, not that. But I don't necessarily think he'll be fully on the bubble. I would say it's highly likely he ends up as the third running back.
Like my takeaway,
it's more as a special teams guy.
Like one takeaway I have from, his answer on DeAndre Swift is, I guess we could stop mocking running backs to the Bears in the second round. Like maybe they're willing to win.
I didn't stop it this week.
No. Well, it was before.
No, yeah, I guess it was. I still kind of believe it though. If Caleb Johnson's there, I think you got to think about it. Because
how about you draft the true center?
Because what Ben Johnson saying what he said today doesn't change the tape, and the tape is, I could actually give it to you right now. Unfortunately, our audience won't be able to see this, but I was watching this Washington game right here, and I don't know if this is gonna work.
Hoge is pulling up tape you cannot see.
Right, but no, you can't. Well, I was trying to show you an example of the point being that he's very different from DeAndre Swift. And whether it's Caleb Johnson or somebody else, I do think the Bears need to add this to the roster. And he has the ability to be patient in the backfield and watch a hole develop that he knows is schemed up that way. You gotta let these plays develop. And so he lets that A gap open up, and he knows the right timing on how to hit that hole. And that is the difference between being stuffed at the line of scrimmage or getting 12 yards. And he's got that explosiveness then once he finds that hole to get through it and pick up what he can. The problem I have with DeAndre Swift, who I think is a weapon, who should be on this offense, who Ben Johnson can utilize. I don't want to get that misconstrued. That what I just said is not DeAndre Swift. He's not that guy. He's always looking to bounce it out. He's not patient enough. He's not that one cut, get upfield, get what you can runner. So I would like to see the Bears find that other version, and then I'm going to trust Ben Johnson to make it all work.
I'm still sliding the knee down to the 3rd round.
Okay.
To number 72.
Well, I said that when I mock drafted Caleb too. Caleb Johnson. I would prefer to draft a running back in the 3rd round. That would be my preference. I think there's a couple guys though in this draft that are exceptions. Like whoever ends up with Ashton Genty, it won't be the Bears, but whoever ends up with Ashton Genty, I think they're going to be pretty happy, even though they probably use 1st round draft capital on them. There's certain, just like the Lions are happy they have Jahmyr Gibbs. There are certain times where it's warranted.
What did you make of Ryan Poles saying that you could never have too many pass rushers, where it's
I agree with
signing one in free agency and drafting one? 100% you agree with him.
Yeah, I don't know why I get killed. We ranked our needs last week on Friday's CHGO show, and I put edge rusher first. And everyone's like, well, you can't ignore the O-line. Well, don't worry. O-line was number 2 and number 3 on the list. I listen to what Ben Johnson said at his opening press conference. This league is about the quarterback.
He said it again today.
Yeah, it's about the quarterback. And so on defense, it's about affecting the quarterback. And
the Bears did not do a good enough job at that last year.
Yeah, so
look, couple of years.
They're all needs. Give me anybody on the line of scrimmage. I'm fine with it. But I don't think we should ignore edge rusher. I think it's a massive need. And like to the point that if we found out in 2 weeks the Bears traded for Myles Garrett, I'd be like, I'm certainly not going to criticize it.
You kind of mentioned like Ben Johnson showing his cards a little bit. I thought Ryan Poles probably showed his cards a little bit as well. Well, yeah, I think we are going to try to sign a good pass rusher in free agency. That may be a B-level guy, but maybe we'll get a 1-year contract.
What if it might be
Josh Sweat,
or even a Chase Young? There's a Saints connection.
Yeah, but he's got to be. That's a 1-year deal for me.
Oh, I agree.
Josh Sweat's that's an A-level big contract.
Yeah,
big contract.
Yeah, he made himself some money in the Super Bowl. The rest of the season didn't really match that. That's why I'm a little worried about that one. But yeah,
at the same time, it's a very good year for pass rushers. Yeah, you have to wait to see if the draft fits your draft board or if things kind of work together. But at the same time, there's so many good ones.
Yeah.
So many good pass rushers. Excuse me.
No, you're good. All right. I think we covered everything from today for the most part. Yeah. Can't think of anything else.
Good. On Thursday, we're going to have a couple guests. A couple athletic writers are going to come on. Lots of names coming your way just in terms of, I think we did free agency last week. We know where things are headed. We'll get to that next week as well. But we're in Indianapolis. Let's talk about some of the prospects here.
Yeah, we'll dive into that. We'll see if there's any other news that kind of trickles out from other teams that affects the Bears. I just saw that Chris Ballard said that there's going to be quarterback competition. That doesn't really affect the Bears, but it's still interesting. That type of stuff comes out. Teams are ready to unload their information. Like when Ryan Poles put up a for sale sign on the number 1 pick 2 years ago, and then today at that press conference, that's where that happened.
Well, it was again 2 years ago, where we started having conversations in the hallways at Lucas Oil Stadium about trading the 1st round with Scott Fitterer, trading the 1st overall pick to the Carolina Panthers.
Yeah. There was something last year, too, on Hard Knocks, where Joe Shane left his box to go to a different team's box. I want to say it was Elliott Wolf. And I think he was trying to be like, yeah, I remember that. And he was like, any interest in trading that pick you guys have? And they're like, no, sorry.
Would you trade back from 10? How far would you go? Say Shedeur Sanders is there at 10. Some team in the 20s wants to move up for him.
I think I would.
I would take the next year's 1.
I think if you can get an extra 1st round pick for moving back that far, I think there's enough good players that you could do that. I like that.
Okay.
If you're going to 1st round pick,
there's usually a line somewhere of how far back you want to go, but those are the conversations that will be happening here.
Because if you get a 1st round pick next year and add like somewhere else in this cluster of picks you already have, which is what 39, 41, and 72.
Yeah,
I have that right.
You get another top 50 pick out of this.
If you add another one in there too, yeah, I love that.
Okay,
I think because then you're ending up with your 1st 2 seconds. You're ending up with 5 players then in like a in the first 3 rounds, you should be able to do something.
More
with that.
swings, more hits.
Yeah, I like it. All right, why don't you work on that deal tonight?
I'll try.
Yeah, just
Get it done. Just float it out there.
Start floating it out there.
I'll do it.
See if
Okay.
any GMs walking around and take you up on it. I don't know. I saw Joe Shane earlier. I should have asked him right there if he was interested in that. All right. Like John said, we'll be back Thursday. We'll have another episode here on Hoge Jahns. Should have more information, some stories from the week, a couple guests.
He wishes.
Oh God, let's end the show before Greg
We'll see
walks over here. Follow us on Twitter. HoganJahns.com is where all the merch is. Look at this guy wearing a suit. If you're watching on YouTube, always making me look.
We're gonna be pals. We're gonna be amigos.
Get out of here. All right, I think I just plugged everything.
All right.
And then
Read us on theathletic.com.
There you go.
allchgo.com.
Yeah, and we'll talk to you on Thursday.
See ya.